April 14th, 1865. A night that was supposed to bring laughter, music, and relief after 4 years of bloody war. But inside Ford's Theater, history took a darker turn. I was there. I saw the president smiling in his box, unaware that in just moments, the course of the nation would change forever. The spring of 1865 carried with it the weight of both triumph and exhaustion. Washington City was alive with celebration, yet underneath the laughter and the songs there lingered a strange unease. Only days earlier, General Lee had surrendered at Appomattox, bringing to a close 4 long years of civil war. Soldiers returned to their homes, some missing limbs, others scarred in ways invisible to the eye. Families reunited, though many carried grief for fathers, brothers, and sons who would never return. Still, there was relief that the killing had ended, that perhaps the nation might finally heal. In those days, the Capitol was draped in flags. Bands played the Star-Spangled Banner. In the streets, children waved banners of red, white, and blue. But amidst the joy, there were darker murmurs. Whispers of bitterness in the South, mutterings from men who refused to accept defeat. President Abraham Lincoln had spoken words of reconciliation, calling for malice toward none, charity for all. Yet not everyone embraced that vision. For some, his words were salt upon a wound that had yet to close. On the evening of April 14th, I found myself among the throngs headed toward Ford's Theater. The president was expected to attend a performance of a comedy, Our American Cousin. For many, it was a chance to see him not as the solemn figure who carried the burdens of war, but as a man among the people, enjoying a simple night of laughter. I had no ticket myself, but fortune placed me close enough to secure entry. Inside, the air was thick with excitement, the chatter of men and women in their best attire filling the house. The theater itself was warm and inviting, with flickering gaslights casting a soft glow upon gilded balconies and crimson drapes. Families found their seats, gentlemen tipped their hats, ladies fanned themselves against the heat of the lamps. There was a sense that this was more than an evening's entertainment. It was a celebration of survival, of hope renewed. The war was ending. Life might begin again. Shortly after 8 o'clock, a stir ran through the crowd. The president had arrived. Abraham Lincoln entered accompanied by his wife, Mary, and their guests, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris. As they moved toward the decorated box above the stage, the audience rose in applause. Lincoln bowed politely, his tall, lean frame unmistakable even at a distance. His face, though deeply lined with care, bore a gentle smile that seemed to ease those who looked upon it. For a moment, the theater was filled not with actors but with reverence. Then, as he took his seat, the play resumed, laughter and merriment returning. From where I sat, I could see the president clearly. He leaned slightly forward, at times whispering to Mary or to Clara. Occasionally he chuckled at the lines delivered upon the stage. Around him, the atmosphere was light, though beneath the surface it seemed almost fragile, as though the laughter might shatter if pressed too hard. Unbeknownst to us, a shadow had already entered the theater. John Wilkes Booth, a familiar actor with access to the very stage on which the play was performed, had slipped inside. To the unsuspecting, he was merely a man at home in a place where his face was known. But on this night he carried more than scripts and bravado. He carried a pistol and a knife and a mind filled with rage. As the play reached its final act, the fatal moment drew near. Around 10 o'clock, Booth made his way quietly up the back staircase, into the hallway that led to the presidential box. In his hand he held a single-shot Derringer pistol. At his side, a dagger meant for defense should anyone interfere. He paused only briefly, listening to the laughter rising from the stage below. Inside the box, Lincoln was leaning forward, watching the scene unfold. Mary sat beside him, her hand occasionally touching his. The audience roared with laughter at a well-delivered line. "You sock-dologizing old man-trap!" And in that instant the shot rang out. A crack echoed through the theater, sharp and unmistakable. For a heartbeat, the audience thought it part of the play. Then came Mary's scream. Booth had fired at point-blank range into the back of Lincoln's head. The president slumped forward, his body collapsing against the side of the box. Chaos erupted. Major Rathbone leapt to his feet, grappling with Booth. In the struggle, Rathbone was slashed deeply by Booth's dagger, blood pouring from his arm. Booth shoved him aside, vaulted over the railing, and leapt onto the stage. His spur caught the American flag draped there, and he landed awkwardly, fracturing his leg. Still, he rose swiftly, brandishing the dagger. With a cry, he shouted words in Latin. Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. The audience gasped, many still too stunned to comprehend. Booth turned, and with surprising agility for a wounded man, sprinted across the stage and disappeared through a side door into the night. Inside the box, pandemonium reigned. Clara Harris screamed, her dress soaked with Rathbone's blood. Mary Lincoln sobbed hysterically, cradling her husband's head. Bystanders surged forward, climbing into the box to render aid. Doctors in the audience rushed to the president's side, examining the wound. Their faces grew grim. The injury was mortal. They ordered that he be moved, yet gently, for fear he might die on the spot. Down in the streets, Booth mounted a horse and galloped into the darkness, beginning a manhunt that would grip the nation for days. But in that moment, all focus remained on the wounded president. He was carried across 10th Street into a modest boarding house, the Peterson House. There, they laid him upon a narrow bed. His long frame was too tall, forcing him to rest diagonally, his feet nearly dangling off the edge. His breathing was ragged, each breath drawn with visible struggle. Blood stained the pillow beneath him. Mary Lincoln moved in and out of the room, overcome with grief. She grasped his hand, pleaded with him to awaken, then collapsed in sobs and was led away, only to return again minutes later. The doctors worked in hushed urgency, probing the wound, clearing clots, doing what little they could to ease his suffering. Their verdict was unanimous. He would not survive. The bullet had destroyed too much. All that remained was to keep him comfortable until the end. One by one, cabinet members arrived. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton quickly assumed control, transforming the boarding house into a command center. Even as Lincoln lay dying, Stanton dispatched messengers, interrogated witnesses, and ordered the pursuit of Booth and his co-conspirators. The nation could not be allowed to descend into chaos. Order had to be maintained. The hours crept by. Lamplight flickered against the walls, casting long shadows across the faces of those gathered. Prayers were whispered, heads bowed in silence. Outside, on 10th Street, a crowd formed. Men and women stood shoulder to shoulder, hushed despite their numbers, waiting for word. Soldiers held them back, yet they refused to disperse. The fate of the president was the fate of the nation, and they would not leave until they knew. Around 2 a.m., a faint moan escaped Lincoln's lips, though he remained unconscious. Mary rushed to his side, crying his name, but there was no response. His breaths grew shallower, each one weaker than the last. As dawn approached, the room grew stiller. Cabinet members stood solemnly at the bedside. Stanton loomed at the foot of the bed, his stern face lined with grief he would not openly display. The president's chest rose and fell faintly, each motion slower, until at last it ceased altogether. At 7:22 a.m., on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln died. Dr. Leal placed fingers to his neck, then withdrew them slowly. "He is gone," he said softly. Mary wailed, collapsing against those near her. Clara wept quietly. Rathbone, his arm bandaged, sat pale and shaken. Stanton, his eyes wet but his voice steady, uttered words that would live forever. "Now he belongs to the ages." The room fell silent. The nation's leader, the man who had preserved the Union, was no more. Outside, the crowd received the news with cries of anguish. Men wept openly in the streets. Women clutched their children. Church bells tolled mournfully across the city. Flags, once waving in victory, were draped with black crepe. In an instant, celebration had turned to mourning. I stepped out into the pale morning light, the air heavy with grief. The Peterson house stood behind me, now forever etched into memory as the place where Abraham Lincoln breathed his last. The night before, laughter had filled Ford's theater. Now, silence gripped the city in shock. I can still hear Mary's cries, the hush of the room as the final breath left him, the solemn tone of Stanton's voice. Those sounds are carved into memory, as unyielding as stone. And I, who was there on that night, can only tell you, it was the night the laughter stopped, and history itself seemed to change course.